Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Uranek, and I'm founder of Startup Disrupt. It's my pleasure to welcome you on the UK Tech Landscape post-EU exit event. We have exciting speakers and agenda ahead of us in this morning with a keynote speech, 2 panel discussions, and a fireside chat. And it wouldn't be possible for us co-organize these events like this without the partners and co-organizers like British Embassy Prague, Department for International Trade, and Supreme Factory. And what is actually Startup Disrupt about? It's a global hub for providing knowledge, inspiration, and connection to entrepreneurs, startup founders, and technology innovators all around the world. And we are doing much more activities besides of community events, such as mentoring sessions. We are providing tools like Disrupt Validator, etc. And now I would like to pass the word to Bettina from British Embassy in Prague. So Betty, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and good morning to everyone. A very warm welcome at today's tech event. My name is Bettina Molnárova, and I lead on investment support for Czech and Slovak companies in the UK at the British Embassy in Prague. Today's event, as its title suggests, will focus on the UK's tech landscape in the new environment post-EU exit. It is organized by the Department for International Trade, and I would also like to thank our partners without whom it would not have been possible, Startup Disrupt and Supreme Factory. Today, you will hear from an exciting mix of tech experts with a wide range of backgrounds. We will start with a keynote presentation from Dr. Chris Moore, the IT's technology specialist, followed by a roundtable discussion on navigating this new landscape and opportunities in the UK. Our second panel will then discuss a very timely and relevant topic of raising funds in the UK. And finally, in the third part of the event, we'll listen to a fireside chat between Marek Zacha, co-founder of SarahCare, a very successful London-based health tech business, and Michael Jacobson, London-based serial entrepreneur and coach. A lot to look forward to, I believe. And now I am delighted to introduce Conor McGurk, Regional Director and Europe Technology Lead at the Department for International Trade, for his welcome speech. Conor, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Patrick and Bettina. And thanks everyone for joining us this morning for what promises to be a really interesting session on the UK tech landscape post-EU exit. As Bettina mentioned, we have a great lineup of panels and speakers this morning covering everything you need to know about doing business in the UK and how that's changed since the 1st of January. But that's exactly what we want to happen. We want people to continue to do business in the UK. We want European firms to continue investing in the UK. We want British firms to continue investing in the EU, for goods and services to continue flowing, for the free exchange of tech talent, ideas, innovation. It's critical to the UK as it is to many of our European partners, and I can put that in some context with some numbers. So the tech sector contributes over 150 billion to the UK economy currently. Within that, we export about 30 billion a year to the EU alone. I think something like 42% of all digital services exports from the UK go to the EU. On goods and digital goods, I think the number is even higher, something like 55%. And the flow of investment back into the UK is just as critical for us. So at present, 1 in 3 of all of our tech projects in the DIT investment pipeline are coming from European countries. To give a sort of more current example, or an example slightly closer to my heart, in September we launched a competition to find the best European tech companies interested in setting up in the UK, the European Tech Rocket Ship Awards. And within weeks, we had 650 applications from over 30 countries. Now, we have spent the last 5 months running through events across Europe, pitching competitions and sifts to find the very, very best amongst those 650. And within those last week, we identified our 8 category winners, and including 2 brilliant companies from this part of the world, Innovator from Slovakia and Alsad Medical from Hungary. And we'll be running a grand finale later this month. So look out for more information on that if you want to dial in and see these 8 brilliant companies pitching for the opportunity to be crowned the champion of champions. So what's the attraction for these EU businesses, and why have global tech businesses already invested over 1.5 trillion in the UK? Well, there's lots of reasons, but chief among them is growth. There are 8 tech unicorns created in the UK in 2019, and that is to say tech companies worth over $1 billion. The UK now has 79, possibly more by the time we're speaking, tech unicorns, which is more than double the number in Germany and more than 3 times the number in Israel. I think globally we sit only behind the US and China in terms of creating billion-dollar tech companies. So if you are interested in rapid growth of your business, then clearly the UK is the place to be. There's an equally impressive story to tell on finance. In 2019, 33% of all tech investment in Europe went to the UK. So that was a staggering 10.1 billion of investment in a single year. In 2020, London raised more VC than Paris, Stockholm, Berlin, and Tel Aviv combined. And at a time when the financial impacts of COVID are making it more and more difficult to find those critical sources of investment, then there's no better time to be in a country where you've got a steady stream of tech investment and quite a mature investment ecosystem. And there's much more besides, and I don't want to talk too long because I know others need to speak, and there are others who can talk about this much better than I can, but there's a high quality workforce, talent attracted from around the globe, homegrown talent coming from some of the world's best universities. Those same universities are doing some world-leading research and development. We have a developed ecosystem of networks, clusters, collaborations. And actually, at this point, we should stop and just make a really quick point. For those looking at the UK, there's much more to the UK than just London. There's amazing things happening in tech across the UK, from cybersecurity in Belfast to gaming and media in Brighton. I think 1 in 4 of Europe's cities with the highest technology investment last year were in the UK. So hundreds of great reasons to be in the UK. I could go on, but instead, given the topic of this morning, maybe I'll briefly mention the UK leaving the EU and the implications specifically for tech and tech businesses. So as you know, the UK left the EU in January 2020. And then at the end of the transition period on the 31st of December, we left the single market and the EU customs union as well. We now have a trade and cooperation agreement between the UK and the EU, which will govern our future relationship. And within that, there's a free trade agreement which secures tariff-free and quota-free trade between the UK and the EU. Now, what that means is the good news is for most tech companies, business will continue as before. Inevitably, there will be areas where the terms of trade change. And I think that's something that we're going to talk about in more detail over the course of the morning. But a few points really quickly from me on that, specifically around what is in the TCA that seeks to minimize those changes and ensure we can have as free flow of business between the UK and Europe as possible while maintaining the regulatory independence of both the UK and the EU. So just as an example, the digital trade chapter within the TCA includes commitments to minimize barriers to the cross-border data flows, commitments to enabling services to be delivered digitally by default. There are protections for e-commerce consumers, a framework for UK-EU cooperation in cybersecurity, commitments to protecting businesses' intellectual property and technologies while they're operating in each other's markets, and an agreement to work collaboratively on key emerging technologies such as AI and quantum. I would probably add to that we've had positive news in the past few weeks that the European Commission has recommended the EU grant the UK data adequacy. And what that recommendation means, when accepted, as we hope it will be by the European Parliament, is that personal data can continue to flow between UK and EU entities with no new requirements for business, which is great news if you're operating across both markets. So taken together, all those digital provisions in the TCA are some of the most ambitious in any FTA in the world. Over and above that, it also commits to significant future collaboration to continue to facilitate market access between EU and UK companies. So a reasonably positive story considering some of the negativity that has surrounded the EU exit narrative over the past few years. And hopefully we're moving beyond that to a point where people can think about, as I say, opportunities, growth, and what each other's markets can deliver to help us achieve our success. So I will just leave you with one final request, which is that if you want to know how to take your company to the next level, enjoy this morning's sessions, think about what the UK can do for you and your business, then come and talk to the great DIT teams that are located all across Europe, and we'll be happy to support you however we can. Now, I believe we have a short video before Bettina will take us through the rest of this morning's session. Thanks for your time.
Welcome once again at today's tech event. I will not take any longer now, and I would like to introduce Dr. Chris Moore, DIT's technology expert, and invite him for his keynote presentation, after which you will be greeted by our moderator of the next panel, Vanessa. Thank you.
Thanks,
Chris,
Bettina. And thanks very much for the introduction from Conor as well. I think that puts what I'm going to say in context. My name is Chris Moore. I'm a technology specialist working for DIT, supporting inward investment from a number of markets around the world, but particularly from Europe. And I just wanted to mention in my introduction that I have visited a number of the markets across the European region, but particularly to the Czech Republic, to Poland, to Romania, and to Hungary to do DIT events. Okay, next slide, please. So this morning, what I'd like to do is to give you an overview of the UK tech environment. You've already heard from Conor quite a lot of the key statistics, and here are a few more. I think one of the most important things is that tech is one of the most important sectors in the UK. It enables many, many other areas. And we think of areas like artificial intelligence and data science that are driving the economy in different ways. You also heard Conor talk about the level of VC investment and the fact that the UK is the #1 destination for VC. And therefore, many, many companies from around the world come to the UK to seek investment as they begin to grow their companies. Now, UK consumers are very technology aware, so they are early adopters. So if you have a new concept that you're looking to evaluate, then there's nowhere better in Europe than the UK to do this. And of course, a lot of this is driven by technologies like cloud computing and artificial intelligence. As a consequence of that, as you heard from Conor, we see more IPOs and more unicorns than anywhere else in the European region. So it is a great market opportunity for inward investors. Next slide, please. Next click, please. Now, we cannot get away from the fact that over the last year or so, COVID-19 has impacted all businesses and all individuals on the planet. And what has this manifested itself, or how has this manifested itself in the UK? Well, not too surprisingly, the rate of retail online has gone through the roof, as you can see here from this chart on the left. And this means that all businesses have moved online. Now, some of them already had a very strong online presence, but the vast majority have needed to do something new. And therefore, there have been opportunities in user interface, user experience, in education, of course, in payments and other financial technologies, and of course, communications. So you think about the number of different platforms that people are using to communicate. Now, all of this technology online has been driven by, again, data science and AI, and we see the application of some of those component technologies in other areas which are very important currently. So the application of technology to healthcare, if it's the quest for a new vaccine, or if it's just better engagement with individual patients. Next click, please. Now, of course, all of this is needs to be balanced by the fact that we need to work in a secure environment. And as you can see from the statistics on the right-hand side, there's been a surge in cybercrime. And this is not just in the UK, this is internationally. And therefore, we've seen stronger demand for cybersecurity technologies around areas like identity management and, of course, having a secure cloud infrastructure as well. Next slide, please. Now, over the next few slides, I just wanted to give you a little bit more detail about some of the key themes. And again, you saw some of these in the video and in Conor's presentation, Conor's introduction. Data analytics is an important technology for a number of reasons, but it's because it drives and gives information about many other sectors. You can see how significant this is in terms of the data presented on the slide. But why is the UK good? Well, we have well-developed expertise in the shape of key institutions and universities, but also it's a little bit easier to access data in the UK than some other markets. So for instance, in healthcare, NHSX is driving the access to data, and there are organizations like the London Data Store that help this in individual cities. And of course, the UK is a location of choice for many, many companies. And here are just a few examples of large companies that have set up data analytics facilities in the UK over the last few years. Next slide, please. Now, Arguably, one of the most exciting areas currently for technology is artificial intelligence. And there are many reports that indicate how significant AI is going to be over the next few years. And here again are some numbers to support that. But what I wanted to highlight is that the UK is the birthplace of many, many dynamic early stage AI companies, as you can see here from the numbers. And there are some reports that if you can look at if you want to know more about this. So for instance, reports by groups like MMC Ventures. But the UK government recognised that AI is a really important area to support. So in 2018, there was close to a £1 billion investment in driving the ability to access data more easily, supporting the skills agenda, and supporting R&D. Since that time, there have been further announcements. So, for instance, in healthcare, £250 million to create an AI lab. Now, of course, we see lots of AI companies coming through, and at the bottom of the slide, you'll see some well-known names. So companies like DeepMind, created in the UK and ultimately acquired by Google. But we see another wave of new companies coming through, and this means that there are lots of opportunities for companies from elsewhere, particularly from Central Europe, to come to the UK to grow their businesses. And again, we see strong clusters within AI, as again indicated on the slide. Next slide, please. Now, just to give you an example of one of the assets, the Alan Turing Institute is the national facility for AI and data science. They have a collaboration with some of the key universities in this field, but also strategic relationships with a number of larger companies and increasingly partnerships with medium-sized companies as well. So as a first port of call to understand more about what's going on AI and data science, the Alan Turing Institute certainly does that. Next slide, please. Now, I wanted to talk also a little bit about the Internet of Things and 5G. Clearly, the Internet of Things is, again, a very important set of technologies, simply because we know that all devices will ultimately be connected, and this is going to be very important for areas like autonomous vehicles. But if you look in tandem at what is happening in 5G, the UK is a great test environment for 5G technologies. We have a national innovation centre at the University of Surrey, but in the last few years have introduced a number of test beds. So environments where companies can come and work with other partners to evaluate and test out their technologies in a 5G environment. And there continues to be more investment in this area, and in particular in transportation, but also in manufacturing and logistics and a number of other areas, as you can see on the slide. Next slide, please. Now, closely linked to 5G and IoT are initiatives around smart cities. And the UK has many, many smart city initiatives, so in key cities like Bristol and Milton Keynes and Glasgow. And on the right of the slide, you can see some of the component technologies and applications that support smart cities. A good example of this as a project that has completed is the City Verve project in Manchester, which looked at the linkage of healthcare, transportation, and infrastructure. But there's more funding coming through all the time. And in fact, there is a Transforming Cities Fund, which is designed to bring new technologies to urban environments, supported, of course, by initiatives around autonomous vehicles. And the Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles is the focal point for that investment as well. Next slide, please. Now, as I mentioned earlier, all of this is accompanied by strong demand for cybersecurity. As you can see from the slide, the demand for cyber is growing significantly, but UK is very committed to this area, with more than, well, close to £2 billion being invested to support the cyber sector, and in particular creating a national cybersecurity centre. So if you're looking to partner with cyber companies, or you're looking for opportunities to sell cyber technology, again, the UK is a great location. And we have many centres of excellence across the country. As Conor mentioned, Belfast has been one of the key clusters, but also in Manchester now, a new program which is going to create a digital security innovation hub. So again, lots of opportunities for early stage companies there as well. Next slide, please. Now, one of the key questions as an early stage company will be for you. Well, if I come to the UK, what kind of support am I going to find? Is there an environment for me to bring my new business in? What mentorship and assistance will I get if I want to sit in an incubator or an accelerator? Well, prior to COVID, there were more than 1,000 workspaces across the UK. The workspaces are still there, but often people are currently working from home. But I think once the COVID restrictions are lifted, people will return to those co-working spaces. And these are across many, many clusters in the country. So it's not just about London. Of course, London is an important centre for many companies, and particularly if you're in the area of financial services. But if you're supporting manufacturing or logistics or transportation or retail, you may find that another centre is much more appropriate for you and could be much more cost effective. So each of these individual digital clusters has its own expertise. As you can see, some examples from the north in places like Edinburgh and Leeds, and through to the west and the south to locations like Bristol. There are more than 150 incubators and more than 180 accelerator programs. So it doesn't matter which technology area you're in, there will be a location that is suitable for you that we can signpost you to. Next slide, please. And next click, please. Now, you heard Conor talking about the number of unicorns. Here's a chart that backs up what he was saying. And in fact, the latest data I've got says 80 unicorns in the UK. But you can see the rate of growth over the last few years, and that continues to be the case. And therefore, we see that the UK remains a destination for any company that is thinking that they may be becoming a unicorn over time. Next click, please. Now, it's not just DIT who says this. I think one of the interesting reports that's come out very recently was the EU Startups report, which indicated that if you go out and look at all of the attributes for an environment to support early stage companies, London comes up top of the list because of the size of the cluster, the fact that there's so much funding available, and the fact that the cluster is very mature. So it's a lot of experience to help early stage companies. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned a minute ago the number of accelerators, and I wanted to go into a little bit more detail here just to give you a sense of that ecosystem and how it works. Next click, please. So there are, of course, well-established accelerator programs, internationally recognized ones like Techstars and homegrown ones like EF in London. Next click, please. But of course, there are also examples of accelerators right across the country. So in this instance, so from Ignite in the Northeast, Codebase in Scotland, Propel in Belfast, and Alacrity in Wales. Next click, please. But what we've seen in the more recent past is the growth of sector-specific accelerators. And again, these cover pretty much every conceivable tech theme you could think of. And again, some examples here: Cylon in cyber, in the Bakery in digital marketing, Digital Health London, BetaDem, which focuses on IoT and 5G and cyber. Next click, please. And the other trend that we've seen in the last few years as well is the growth of corporate-backed accelerator programs. So if you are particularly interested in working in the telco sector, organizations like Wira, supported by Telefonica, but also examples here from automotive, from fintech, and from retail. So lots of very familiar names are running their own accelerator programs in the UK. Next slide, please. One of the other programs that has been very successful in the last few years is the range of growth programs supported by TechNation. TechNation is supported by government, but it is the organization that supports entrepreneurs on the ground in the UK. They run programs which are designed to help grow the next generation of unicorns, like Upscale and Future 50, but they also focus particularly on some key technology themes. And those are given on the right-hand side of the slide. So in areas like cyber and AI and net zero, which is focusing on clean tech and sustainability. These growth programs, you have to be selected to join. There's no equity provided, but there's no equity taken, but they provide a huge amount of help and guidance for companies to grow, to access funding, and to reach new customers. Next slide, please. Now, we will hear later on today more detail about how to access funding, but I just wanted to highlight very quickly some of the opportunities here. of course, we have in the UK all of the expected routes of funding, so VCs and business angels, but also the role of corporates, debt funding and crowdfunding is very important too. Most of these routes to funding will require you to have a formal UK presence, but we know that that's very easy to set up a company in the UK. And there are many, many resources to help, as I've indicated here. So organizations like the British Business Bank, TechNation I mentioned, and free to access resources like the Entrepreneur Handbook. But all of these you can access with the support of DIT. So it's at this point when you're thinking about funding, please reach out to a DIT office across the Central European region to get more information. Next slide, please. Now, some of you will be tech or R&D intensive organizations where collaboration with universities will be important. The UK spends a huge amount of money in supporting R&D through organizations like UKRI, but there are many, many ways to engage with universities. So all of the traditional routes you would expect, but also centers for doctoral training, which give you the opportunity to work at very low cost with a university on a short-term project. If your technology is closer to market, Innovate UK provides funding across a number of different specific themes, and also they have general calls. For the longer term, more strategic aspects of R&D, the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund gives you opportunities there, and I'll come to that in a moment. All of this is driven by tax breaks, so particularly things like R&D tax credits and patent box. And again, we can give you a lot more information about those in a separate one-to-one call with you. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned the Challenge Fund a moment ago. This is aligned across 4 grand challenges, which are indicated at the top. There have been more than 20 of these so far, but these are focused on those longer term, more impactful areas of technology. So looking at things like self-driving cars, robotics, and quantum technologies. Next slide, please. One of the other themes in the UK is the existence of a number of innovation centres. These are called catapults, and these provide support across a number of different areas. There are 9 of these altogether, covering everything from manufacturing through to healthcare. But here are 2 examples for tech, one in digital, focusing on areas like AI and immersive technologies, and the Connected Places Catapult, which focuses on technologies to support smart cities. So again, depending on which area you're in, plenty of opportunities for collaboration. Next slide, please. Equally well, we have regional innovation centres, and here are some examples from Scotland. These are supported by the Scottish Government, and these 2 focus respectively on sensors and imaging systems, IoT. So that's Census, and the Data Lab, which is looking at data science and AI. So again, opportunities to collaborate with universities and larger companies through these mechanisms. Next slide, please. And coming towards the end of the presentation, I just wanted to highlight talent. Again, I think this was mentioned in the introduction, but clearly the UK has some of the best universities in the world. And outside of those top 4, if you look down the list of the next 100, there's a very significant number of UK universities. But of course, as you begin to build your business, it's not just about tech skills, it's about other things. It's the softer skills like business development, marketing, and sales, all of which are strongly represented in the UK as well. There are lots of opportunities to attract different types of talent, but also think about apprenticeships, which give you the ability to have subsidized support to bring in young people into your organization to grow the talent yourself, with significant up to 90% support for the salaries for those individuals. Again, lots of mechanisms to attract talent, and again, this is something we can talk to you on a one-to-one basis. Next slide, please. And finally, we're here to help you. DIT has a presence in more than 100 countries worldwide. So if you're using the UK as a springboard, say for North America or for the Middle East or other markets, we can certainly help you. And providing help around all of those other things that you need to establish your business. And again, we will have other experts talking to you about things like visas later on in today's session. And next slide, please. And finally, we know we're all working in a virtual environment, but there is still the opportunity to participate in UK tech shows. and some of these will move towards hybrid and then ultimately fully physical later in the year, we hope. But here are some examples covering different technology areas from AI to cloud and cyber. Just to highlight London Tech Week, which takes place in September, which is a very good starting point to know about the tech scene in general, but also the regional events such as Birmingham Tech Week and Leeds Digital Festival, which give you an insight into a particular region in the UK. And again, DIT colleagues will be able to advise and signpost you to the most appropriate events for you for your participation. And next slide, and I think the final slide, these are my contact details should you want to get in direct contact. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Chris, for that fantastic wealth of knowledge you just shared there. Please stick around because you'll be joining our next panel. I would just like to briefly welcome you again to today's event. My name is Peter. I'm a partner at Supreme Factory, which is an accelerator and a VC fund based in London, supporting pre-seed and seed stage companies by bridging the gap between UK and emerging Europe. And we do focus on AI and digital health, as Chris mentioned, and of course, fintech, as London being the financial capital of the world. So following the success of Tech Rocket Ship Awards with it in Czech and Slovak, it's a great honor really to come back and moderate this panel and then kind of to discover more thriving tech ecosystem here in the UK and potentially tap into some of the capital that is coming through. So today our audience is up for a treat. We have 2 panels and a fireside chat. And before we move on, I just want to briefly mention that if you want to ask any questions, you can do so on slido.com/SDL. That's slido.com/SDL. You can see just below on the screen. And we will be answering the most voted questions. And there is a fun fact about Slido. They actually joined a previous event we did at Tech Rocket Ship. We invited them there because they're one of the great success stories from Slovak company coming to the UK. And the fun fact is that day after they came to as a panelist, Slido got acquired by Cisco. And the way how they scaled to London was that they came to one of our startup grind events with a backpack, and we just onboarded them as this is kind of a British partnership culture where we just help companies unconditionally and then kind of they give back to the ecosystem later on. Okay, so we have 4 fantastic panelists, speakers today on next event. And let's get straight into it. Could we please invite all the panelists to the stage to introduce themselves? Amazing. We already heard from Chris. So we have Anthony. Could you please introduce yourself? You have a lovely set of guitars back there.
Yeah, I noticed you had one behind you, Peter, as well. Good morning, everybody. My name is Anthony Sheehan. I'm a UK-based entrepreneur. I'm currently running a drone company, but also I've been working for several years on the Global Entrepreneurship Program, which is a DIT initiative to help overseas founders bring their businesses to the UK. And through that program, we've brought in over 1,000 entrepreneurs over a 10-year period, many of which have gone on to great things, raised large amounts of VC and established global companies out of different regions of the UK. And we continue to see interest today, and we continue to work quite extensively across Central Eastern Europe with founders coming from that region to the UK.
Thank you, Anthony. Emiliano, really good to have you on board. I'm a part of Tech London Advocates, and I've been following your amazing work in Emerging Europe, a new group you formed as Global Tech Advocates. Could you please introduce yourselves and tell us a bit more about what you do at Emerging Europe? And also, can you please unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Thank you so much. Yes.
Perfect. Well, great to be here. So I'm a partner at Emerging Europe, and we are a news intelligence and community platform. And our mission is to foster sustainable development in the region that we call Emerging Europe. And we see innovation and tech as the key drivers for that growth, because it's about changing the perception of that region as a place to, let's say, previously outsource on the cheap, and a real tech partner for the world. So that's what we envision that region as becoming. And as you mentioned, we indeed set up a group that is within the Global Tech Advocates Network that is basically bringing together this region to a global network and connecting to London, which is something we're very excited about. There's a lot of things happening already, and we see much more potential.
There is definitely a potential there. Thanks for sharing that. Let's just open a discussion with a short and simple answer of what makes UK such a great place to innovate. We heard so many things about this from Chris, but could you, our panelists, just briefly mention in one sentence what's your opinion on why UK is such a great place to innovate?
Yeah, I'll have a crack at that first, Peter. I think Chris has put everything in perfect perspective in terms of the data, the opportunities, the structures, the networks that are in place. I'll add one word to that, which is energy. I think the UK environment, even at a time like this where we can't get together in person, is characterised by tremendous energy and openness and a sense of collaboration. And I continue to be surprised by how quickly overseas founders coming to the UK are able to build those networks, find customers, find funding, and tap into people that are interested in what they're doing and keen to help them. So I'd stress that aspect of what's going on here.
Yeah, I think that like Anthony said, Chris covered quite a lot of ground. And one thing he mentioned, that the UK is pretty much a springboard to the world. You can really go into the North America or the Middle East or Asia from there. And there's a lot of eyes on the UK when it comes to what's happening in tech. So yes, there is lots happening. You have to really stand out. But if you want to make it big, it's a great place to be. I think that will be the main thing about it.
And just finally to add, I've already mentioned a few things, so market opportunity, talent, funding, but I think openness, the fact that the UK is very receptive to entrepreneurs. There's a long history of entrepreneurs coming from all over the planet to be in the UK and to be successful. So it's that open, welcoming spirit, I think.
Amazing, really good to hear those short notes about why UK is such a great place to innovate. And we all heard that it only takes 30 minutes or so and £50 to incorporate a company in the UK and then access all these tax benefits and perks. And there's really a great financial support. Chris mentioned, I believe, a future fund from British Business Bank, getting matching with whether you're a scale up or a startup, from VCs and angels in their tax reliefs. But how actually it is easy to set up a company UK? What's your experience from that? Emiliano, have you heard anything, or maybe Anthony could
yeah, obviously part of the thing we have on our program is we're all entrepreneurs ourselves. So I've set companies up myself, and it takes half an hour to an hour to actually set the thing up. And as you say, the cost is about £40 or £50. That's actually not quite the whole story, to be fair. So if you're coming from overseas, it's not that much more expensive, but you need to be aware of certain reporting requirements. As you set the company up, the government need to be made aware of of your accounts and the tax you will owe once you begin to trade. If you're employing people, you need to make certain declarations and certain submissions. But that's actually still relatively simple. Usually, a good low-cost accountant, which I'm sure most of us on the panel here, and as well as the other government folk, are happy to recommend, will guide you through that process. And it's only, it's a few extra hours of work a year to make that regulatory compliance side. And then the other complexity might be depending on the relationship you want with the company in the home territory, and just making sure that's set up so that you're incurring costs and recognizing revenue in the right place. There's a little bit of thought needs to go into each individual situation, but the legal process is really simple, and the commitment and the ongoing outlay is very small to do so.
Yeah, agreed here. And I think that not only it's easy to open a company, but also easy to run a company, which is the most important part. I think things are very straightforward in the UK. Let's say regulations, like reporting, it's made in a way that really allows you to have time to actually grow the business and not just spend time in admin. And I think that's something that is really important, especially for a company that is starting. You don't have that much staff, and you need to focus on your growth. And the UK really allows you to do that.
One extra thing just to mention, as Anthony, wanting to give the full picture, said, opening a bank account is always challenging, irrespective of where you are in the world, and it can take a little while in the UK, and you need to plan for that. However, the good news is DIT has helped many companies with the bank account part, and indeed we have a specialist within the team who solely focuses on that. So if you do have any issues, then we are certainly able to provide lots of help and guidance about that.
It's a very good point, Chris. And I might just add that there are actually challenging banks at the moment in the UK, which only takes about a few hours to incorporate or to register an account as business account. Okay, so let's briefly talk about what is so special about the UK ecosystem. We heard some stories about, tax reliefs, R&D tax credits. There's around 100 billion coming from these companies from corporate tax and in income tax and being recycled back into the ecosystem, especially focusing on tech. Is it that's really kind of better opportunity than for entrepreneurs to go to France or Germany, or is it just a British feather that attracts all these talents? Why do you think that people should come to the UK rather than France or Germany? That was my question.
Can I jump in and try and answer that a bit, and then I'm sure Emiliano and Anthony will have some more input. I did look at the French offer a while ago, and in France they have a whole series of different initiatives. But I think what's different about the UK is that the help and the guidance and the ecosystem has been established for a long time. So this means that if you're looking to raise funding in the UK, which clearly is an important part for most companies' growth, then that's easier to do. I mean, first of all, there's much more venture capital available, but the business angels and VCs are often serial entrepreneurs themselves. They have been through this pathway. They know what the growing pains are for an early stage company. So they will. I mean, it's never easy to raise funding, but it's perhaps easier to raise funding in the UK than many other markets. And beyond that, there are a lot of other measures, as you mentioned, Peter, the R&D tax credits and other incentives, including things like enterprise zones. There are more than 40 of these across the country, which give low-cost soft landing packages to help companies to establish in that particular locality.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I think one of the things that characterizes the UK is the support and ease of building a company across the whole life cycle of an early stage business through to a scale up, through to larger than that. I think many other European countries have done some great things. There are some really good programs, some really innovative programs in different markets, including some of the smaller countries, Estonia and places like that entrepreneurs should absolutely go and look at and make sensible decisions around. The UK tends to provide that support and coverage across everything from really early stage. So, incubators, accelerators, some of the grant funding Chris was talking about is really useful to companies once they're in that pre-revenue stage before they can really attract investors. Through angel, early institution, and VC and beyond. And whilst there's always little pressure points in that development, there's no great huge chasm or funding gap or point where companies know they're going to have to leave and go somewhere else. So it's that support for a company across the whole life cycle that I think is one of the really attractive things. And that includes then, I think the point Emiliano made, support for export into a wide range of global markets through, both just to establish trade routes and through specific government support programs. One of the things we do on our program is immediately get people who come to the UK addressing both the UK market, but the international opportunity as well. And we see some quite spectacular results with that.
Yeah, it's a very good point. So most of the Europeans actually see UK as a stepping stone to bigger markets like US. But do they really need to be set up in the UK to to access all these perks and benefits, or can just they do this virtually from anywhere? Really, these days, most of the companies, they work from their pajamas somewhere in the woods, I guess. So what's your opinion on that? Or do companies really have to set up in the UK to access all of these things?
Could I just try and quickly respond to that? So there are stages to this. So of course you can try and do business from your home market directly with the UK, but UK businesses, UK consumers like to see that there is some sort of local presence. It gives them confidence. But of course you can, as a first step, set up a virtual office. So you work with a law firm or accountancy firm or a co-working space to create that presence. Once you've got that, the UK entity, the UK bank account, and that virtual presence, then you can start employing people directly in the UK. And as you begin to move more of the company, or you have people from the home parent organization in the UK, then a lot of those other things become much easier. So we recognize that the companies will have different viewpoints on that, but what we try to do is to help companies through that whole journey from operating from the home market through to being fully set up in the UK.
I guess that there are some costs related when you're based in the UK, and we all know that London is a very expensive city. But Chris mentioned that there are other regions that you can creatively overtake these challenges. So, for example, just 2 hours away from London, there is a Sheffield or Belfast in Northern Ireland. So, what are the options there if someone don't have enough money to pay for that high expensive life in London? Is there a way or places where we could go above and beyond London in the UK?
Well, yeah, very much so. I mean, the regional agenda has been one that's been under discussion for many years, and we've seen so many programs and centers of excellence actually, and areas of genuine expertise grow up around the country. And depending on the sector you're in, will depend perhaps where you should be. And in fact, there are lots of businesses and lots of entrepreneurs in personal situations who probably should think twice about London. So if you're bringing school-aged kids, I'd probably argue you might want to think twice about London. If your business is in health, or your business is in manufacturing or automotive, or the software industries around and supporting that, there's no real reason that you need to be in London. It may well be the right place for you, but there are centres across the country, and particularly in places like Manchester and Leeds and Edinburgh, and increasingly in Wales. There are a lot of really good people you can work with. The networks and communities are perhaps a little easier to tap into. You turn up at a first meeting and you'll know most of the people in the local community and network reasonably quickly. We've had businesses in the last couple of years go into, me personally, have guided entrepreneurs into Cardiff, into Yorkshire, and they're all doing very well. The main point is, I think you probably want to be able to access London. As you say, 1 or 2 hours away on a train, you've got most of the country. And there will be customers, there will be investment conversations you probably want to have there, but there's no need for you to be within a mile of Bow Bells, as we say.
Chris, did you want to mention something as well?
I think Anthony's covered a lot of the key points, but just to say, Manchester, for instance, the fastest growing tech cluster in the UK currently, but the difference in cost can be very significant. So if you take London as being 100%, by the time you get to Birmingham, you're probably about 70%. By the time you get to Leeds, that's probably 60 to 70%. And if you go to Belfast, it's probably 50%. But of course, I think, again, what Anthony said about the access or the ability to get to London quickly is an important thing to consider as well.
Just one other thing on that, Peter, and also taps back into the last question you asked. One of the common models to do this also is for the founders and the business development people and the sales leaders to come across pretty quickly and start raising money and building a global company here in the UK. Often the technical center, the R&D, the support staff will stay in the home market, and in fact that presence will often grow And the first place they might add 5 or 10 jobs is actually their home market, servicing new customers that they're finding in the UK. And that may well be, the way to balance those costs out as well. You may well need your management team to be in and around London, but you've got options either elsewhere in the UK or back in your home market for your R&D staff and your technical team that you probably don't want to lose having built them in the home market. So there's lots of flexibility in how founders can build those teams.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I just want to welcome to the stage Julian Davis from DAT. He's investment policy advisor. Welcome, Julian.
Thanks, Peter.
Yes, maybe we could start with you for the next question, and it is about what has changed in the tech sector since EU exit, and obviously because of the pandemic. Have you seen any data from migrations, from any that's something you want to share with our audience?
Obviously, freedom of movement has ended. I don't think that's had a significant effect on the tech sector as such. But obviously, if you're coming to the UK from Europe now, you can come for 6 months at a time to visit. But if you're looking to come for longer, then you'll need to consider the appropriate working visa, for example, the startup visa, the Innovator Visa, or if you're a leader in your field or emerging leader, perhaps the global talent visa. I think there's probably going to be more of an issue, for example, if you're recruiting talent from Europe as an employer or as a business, then you'll need to ensure that you have a sponsor license in place. If you're employing EU citizens, then they will need to have that the appropriate visa as well. But I think this is not a new model. The system's been improved in terms of accessibility to the UK. Obviously, freedom of movement, it's very early stages since that finished.
Thank you for sharing that. You touched upon some visa things, and I know TechNation has been doing a great job with exceptional talents and now moving to Innovator Visa, startup, and even what I've heard, a scale-up visa, which is absolutely amazing. Just want to put the next question to really anyone in the audience, and it's about what are the best routes to market. Chris mentioned that there are loads of accelerators. I've seen a report by Nesta. There are actually more than 500 accelerators and incubators, which is a fantastic pathway for a startup to scale from very early stage and get support from mentorships to corporate partnerships and then strategic investors, really. Do anyone on the panel have some thoughts about what are the best routes to the markets for companies that are coming from Europe to the UK?
If I could just jump in and make a couple of suggestions. First of all, I think finding the right communities. So depending on whether you're selling to consumers, to small and medium-sized businesses, to larger corporates, will determine which route you want to go. So in some industries, there are only a small number of customers. So finding the networks and the communities, be it through the collaboration with the catapults or using the connections of an accelerator in cyber, for instance, works very well in that incubator accelerator environment. But also thinking about other routes. So there are, for instance, lead generation agencies you can partner with. I mean, that's for a fee service, but they, on behalf of you, your organization, can reach out to potential clients. And there are other approaches, so using things like AI and data analytics to help you improve your online presence, for instance. There's a myriad of different approaches, and again, that's the kind of conversation that we can have with a company who's interested in the UK.
Emiliano, from your experience, how easy it was to come to the UK and set up and run now one of the most popular emerging Europe news media?
Quite straightforward, as I mentioned before. It's, I mean, setting up a company is very simple, like we talked about before. And I think that, as Chris said, now we have to find your ecosystem in a way and find the support network. And things just start happening from there. And just last week, we spoke to this company called Untitled from Lithuania, and they're actually moving their headquarters to the UK from Vilnius. which is funny because people talk about the other way around at times. And they said that for them, being in the UK is very important because they want that access to that startup ecosystem and really make things happen, being there and connecting with people. Of course, that's not that easy right now, but it's the key selling point in my point of view.
Is there something to do with kind of being a British brand, so you can actually have that quality integrated in your company and billing? You can charge more because of that, or also the other way around? Do you see the kind of UK customers buying from overseas companies as well? What do you see in that? Do you have some data from emerging Europe on that?
Well, I think that there is this additional reputation and trustworthiness that you get from having a UK presence. But if you're looking at, again, the UK market, because if you compare that with France and Germany, for example, there's a huge issue with trust in those markets. And we have a lot of tech companies that want to enter Germany or grow there, and they have to work with Germans to really build that trust first. And they hire German people to represent them, because for them to do that on their own is really tough. So there is this additional hurdle, and the UK is much more open in that sense. So I think it's another plus that the country has.
Okay, great. We do have many questions coming from Slido from our audience, but I just wanted to touch base on the Brexit and data protection. What business needs to be kind of fully compliant after the Brexit? It comes to data flows and Chris, what mentioned with the cybersecurity, and we're now having more attacks. Is there anything that businesses should know now when it comes to data flows? Obviously, we are all in data and AI. So do you have any thoughts on this?
Maybe I can make a couple of comments, and then others might want to add to it. Currently, within the European region, everybody is obliged to follow GDPR. Now, the UK has been following GDPR, and there, as you heard from Conor's introduction, there is a move to get that to be approved, essentially going forward with the European Parliament, so that data can be flow freely between the EU and the UK going forward. So that's one aspect, and I think also we have to look at the broader context as well, because a lot of organizations want to hold data in other parts of the EU, but to operate in the UK and then to sell other markets like the US. And again, we are perhaps in a better data regulatory environment than some other markets because of the good relationship we have with North America as well. But again, I would say if you have very specific questions, please let us know offline and we can answer them on an individual basis.
Amazing. That's very helpful. And when it comes to Brexit impact, Julian, could you tell us more about professionals that are from Europe? They're currently working in the UK, or work permit or anything related. What's the future for them in terms of having employees here or employing other people? Could you tell us more about how is the situation with EU nationals here?
So if you were an EU national in the UK before the 31st of December 2020, then you would have been able to apply for either pre-settled or settled status, and that would have enabled you to live and work in the UK quite freely. For those coming after 1st of January 2021, as I mentioned earlier, you will require a visa. So if you're coming to visit for up to 6 months, you don't require a visa. But if you're looking to move your business here, then you will need to look into the most suitable route to market, as I mentioned earlier. So you have the startup visa, which is for graduates, early stage entrepreneurs with innovative business ideas and want to set up a business in the UK. For this visa, you'd need to be endorsed by an endorsing body, which can be a UK higher education institution or a business with a history of supporting entrepreneurs. And there's no funding requirement for that type of visa. You could stay in the UK for up to 2 years, but it doesn't lead to settlement. However, you would be able to switch into another visa route, say, for example, the Innovator Visa. Now, I think the Innovator Visa, so if you're coming from Europe and you're a more established entrepreneur with a successful track record of running a business, and you have 50,000 in investment funds, which can come from any source, by the way, then you can come to the UK and begin growing a business that way. The visa lasts for 3 years, and after 3 years, providing the business has reached a certain level, then you could apply for settlement. But if the business hasn't grown to that point, then you can extend your visa and continue to extend it until such time that you do meet that requirement. I think the route open to European nationals now is, as mentioned earlier, the global talent route. So that's aimed at leaders or potential leaders in fields of academia, research, arts, culture, and more importantly for this audience, digital technology. Now, for that visa, there's no funding requirement, but you will need 3 letters of recommendation from well-established organizations or individuals acknowledged as experts in their field who can support your application. So, for example, professors at universities or well-known companies, senior figures within those companies. So those are some of the options now that are now available to European nationals. There are other routes to market, if you like, but I think when we're looking at startups, probably the startup visa, the Innovator Visa, and global talent are probably the most suitable.
Thank you for sharing that useful information. And when it comes to visa application best practices, there's so many professionals here in UK that could help. But do you have any kind of resources that our audience can tap into and learn more about? Do you have anything to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a really helpful online tool which is called Check If You Need a UK Visa. So just type that into your Google engine. I'll be happy to share the link following today's session. Otherwise, the migration team, myself and the team at DIT, or Bettina at Post, we're on hand and we're more than happy to guide and answer questions on the UK visa system. So get in touch with us. We're here to help. And once you're ready to apply for a visa, you've decided which route you want to take, then you can get in touch with us and we can register DIT interest in your application with the Home Office and monitor progress. We are here to support you. Now, should you wish to seek professional advice, if you want to go to an immigration lawyer, then certainly you can choose your own lawyer. But DIT also has the investment support directory, which is fully searchable and contains details of service provider professionals, so immigration lawyers, accountants. There's a whole variety there. Now, it's probably important to remember, if you go through the directory, any lawyer listed will provide an hour of free immigration advice to ascertain your needs. So you could argue if you spoke to 3 or 4 lawyers, you get 3 or 4 hours of immigration advice for free. But in the most case, it's for them to ascertain what your needs are and to guide you appropriately. And all the professional providers in the directory have been vetted by DIT. So it's a really helpful resource. But the main thing is we're here to help. So please get in touch with us if you do have any questions.
It's absolutely amazing. I love that approach that Chris also mentioned, this openness and paid forward attitude, that you can still do a cross quote, speaking to 3 different solicitors and not paying the high fees, but getting kind of knowledge from them, which is a kind of a creative way of getting around these challenges that we face with pandemic and EU exit. We have some questions from the audience, and it's in regards to the Europass Awards and the other similar events that have been going on for ages. And what are the importance of these events that are running across UK tech scene? I know there are loads of events. I've been running Startup Grind London, which is the world's largest community of entrepreneurs, as a co-director for many years. And I know in London alone, there are at least 10 events every day that are related to tech, both good and bad. But what do you think are importance of event, even such as this, that we kind of share our experiences and knowledge?
Can I just make a quick comment? I'm sure Anthony's got some views on this too. I think, like you said, Petar, there are some good ones and there are some less good ones. The events are a great way to engage, to tell an audience about your technology, your product, your service, and also potentially to find talent, to find customers, and to find investors. I think if you win an award or you win a competition, then that's something you can use in your marketing, clearly. But also, I think investors pay attention to that. So, for instance, to give you an example, we talked about TechNation and talked about some of their programs for growth. If you are a company that has been shortlisted and then is invited to participate in that program, that's a validation, if you like. It means that you've been through some competitive process to get there. And as Conor talked about the Tech Rocket Ship Awards, that is a very significant competition across the whole of the European region. So 650 companies going down to, I think there's a winner's selection of just a small number of companies. To have been shortlisted in that competition means that you are already a very high quality company, that a lot of people have taken some time to assess you. And I think that's very beneficial for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think you know, it's actually not. There was a time where you could say, you know, what was going on in London in particular, maybe 8-10 years ago, was somewhat unique, or, you know, mirrored the best aspects of the west coast of the US or something. You can, before the pandemic, you could pretty much pitch up in any European city, town of a decent size, and there will be a tech cluster, and there will be a crowd that gets together and meets and discusses and collaborates. That's not so unique anymore. There's some really good sectoral groups that meet around specific interests, and I think if you're a founder in you know, one of those niche markets, it's great to find those people and identify people you can work with that way. So I think they're a really important part of people coming here and getting settled and meeting like-minded collaborators and potential hires and that kind of thing. I actually get a little concerned when people over-egg it. I in some ways, I get to a point where I prefer to hear about the customers they've been meeting and the investors they've been meeting rather than the 15 events they went to last week. So it actually can become a distraction. And I think it's important that you identify the groups that are going to be valuable to you and that you enjoy participating in, and perhaps turn the noise down on some of the others and get on with building your business. So, you know, you could certainly spend an awful lot of time, particularly in London. Once things open up again, I'm sure these things will all be back. And I do see people who put off the hard task of building a business, calling a customer, figuring out why their product isn't quite right, in favor of attending 100 events a year. So they're great, they're really useful, but in their place.
Great. So finding that balance, as everything in life is crucial. Julian, please go on.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add to that, because we had the Chancellor's announcement yesterday, and one of the things that came out that in terms of Visa and recognizing global talent is that if you have won international prizes or awards, then this could contribute to your visa application. This is important, and I think this plays to Anthony's point around choosing the right event. So if you are awarded a prize from a recognized event, then this could be a really useful tool when you come to apply for your visa. So it's probably worth bearing that in mind as well.
Well, you mentioned the event that took yesterday, you know, announcing the budget publicly and everything. Do you have any takeaways from that event, and what do you think about, you know, when are we going to come back to the normal workplace and we give a fintech city kind of a boost?
I'll have a crack at that. It's interesting because the setup for this conversation was largely around post-Brexit, but I think that conversation, certainly for technology entrepreneurs, has been dwarfed by the pandemic, the implications, and hopefully the recovery that's due to come. We're making a decent job of the vaccination program in the UK, and I think here, you know, we've all got some visibility of when we think things might start returning. I don't think we go back to how things were. Too much has changed, some of which for the better. So I don't think it's a return to how things were 2 years ago, although obviously once people can be here, meet face to face, all of that, the events can run in person, we're all going to welcome that. What I do sense amongst technology entrepreneurs is just a tremendous sense of opportunity. So some founders, including those in Eastern Europe and Central Europe, have been using the time really wisely to build their contacts, using things like Zoom to actually get better access to people they may have struggled to meet. So I think access has actually been somewhat easier across the last 12 months to decision makers and senior people in organizations you may want to sell to. Building trust and closing deals and closing investment has obviously been harder because those things are dependent on face-to-face. So I think there are people using this period really wisely to set themselves up for rapid acceleration, rapid growth when things do return and people do return to spending money and using some of the savings they've put aside in this period. And I get a sense of great excitement. Lots of corporate budgets that would have been tied up with long-term suppliers and would have been hard to crack are suddenly going to be open again. Everybody's going to be looking at how they do things and where they spend money. So the next year, 18 months is going to be a tremendous time for startups here in the UK and scale-ups. As everything changes, everything is up for grabs.
Gentlemen, any other kind of closing words before we move to the next panel?
Just to add, I think Anthony said a lot of really useful, good things just in the last few minutes. But I think there is a timeliness here. I mean, some companies I've spoken to have said, "Oh, we can't do anything. We'll have to wait until it's all over." Whereas other companies, as Anthony said, are really preparing, and they're opening, they're creating a UK entity, they're opening a virtual office, they haven't necessarily planned to get on the next plane to come here, but they have engaged through Zoom or other means with some of those customers and beginning to get some of those deals going. And therefore, when we are able to travel again, those companies will hit the ground running. And I think that's applicable particularly to companies from other parts of Europe, and so particularly from Central and Eastern Europe, because there's less difference in time zone, and they can do a lot of those things very, very easily. So don't wait, act now.
Amazing. Julian, would you like to give some closing remarks from your side and kind of maybe end with some of the positive notes on migration and then future of visas?
Yeah, applying for a visa, it can be done online. It's much quicker than it used to be, and it's a relatively straightforward process. All the guidance is out there. There are tools to help you, and we can support you as well. So don't let this be a barrier. The UK is open for business. Obviously, we do have a pandemic around us, but it's still a welcoming environment. I think we are returning to life, a more normal life. And I think, as Anthony mentioned, with the vaccinations and everything, I think we're going to be open quite soon. It's looking really, really positive. So don't delay. I think get yourself set up and prepared and get in touch with us, and we're happy to help take you forward.
That's really great to hear. I believe we're just a few months away from, worlds being vaccinated, and then we're coming back to the new normal. So I just want to thank all of our dear panelists for joining us today. Such a great wealth of knowledge and experience. Thank you for sharing all the fantastic talks. For the audience that ask questions, we'll make sure to answer them. Feel free to connect with Chris, Anthony, and Julian over LinkedIn, or you saw Chris's email as well, or get in touch with me. We're now moving to our next panel. Thank you again for your participation here. But next panel is really interesting and gives me great pleasure to announce two ladies in a VC, in a sector which is still it doesn't have enough female founders and female investors. So it gives me a great pleasure to invite to the stage our next panelists. Monique, welcome.
Hi, Peter.
And Emma, welcome. Yeah, would you please be so kind to introduce yourself? Monique, should we start with you with Soho Ventures?
I'll go first. Yeah, so hi, I'm Monique. I'm one of the co-founders of Soho Ventures. We're an all-female-led early stage fund based in London and Vancouver, where our experience ranges from founders, investors, operators, and government advisors. Actually, one of my colleagues is ex-DIT. We've invested just over 55 million across 50 companies in our previous roles as investors. And prior to launching Soho Ventures, I was part of a founding team of another early stage fund where I managed 4 funds and £20 million. So at Soho Ventures, we're a thematic investor. So we look for founders delivering global solutions, reaching wider communities in a sustainable and socially responsible way. We target companies typically at late seed, so anything kind of from pre-Series A, and ideally post-revenue. So we specifically look for companies that have ambition to scale globally.
Thank you so much. Emma, would you please introduce yourself?
No problem. My name is Emma McRae. I'm a lead investment director here at Fortunas Capital. As it currently stands, Fortunas is the largest impact investment fund in the UK. We have a £250 million impact fund and a £50 million R&D fund. We're also a home office endorsing body, so we work very closely with the government to seek innovation from around the world and help settle those businesses here in the UK. We offer an incubation stage for very early startup phases, and then we can transition them all the way through into our VC fund for further funding as we go. We kind of look at heavily into the tech sector of the fintech, biotech, and wellness. We look for ideas that are solving a global problem through innovation. And we have very close contacts with the DIT to help look through their deal flow and find the best opportunities from around the world to bring back here to the UK.
Amazing. Thank you for the introduction. I really like when investors tell a story about their focus, the stage of the companies, the sectors, the ticket sizes, and everything else. So that's fantastic. I just want to demystify how easy is to raise funding in the UK right now.
Sorry, Monique, after you.
No, go ahead.
I think, the UK is a very friendly place now to do business and raise capital. There's some fantastic initiatives brought forward by the government, such as EIS schemes, R&D tax credits, VCTs. So investors are really beginning to see the benefits of investing in startup and early stage companies. So I think, it's better than ever with these new incentives.
I would agree. I mean, as I think Conor or Chris mentioned earlier, there's kind of record year. Last year was a record year for deal numbers and second highest kind of in terms of amount invested. So, I mean, I think taking that into account is probably more important than ever as funds are becoming more picky with their earlier stage investments. And if you're an early stage company, just one thing I would kind of a tip I would give, just to focus on gaining maybe some form of traction and understanding the market before kind of raising a large seed round in the UK. But there's plenty of capital going around. There's a lot of investors still very much actively investing.
Yeah, Emma, you mentioned SEIS and EIS, and for the companies that are from Central Eastern Europe, how do they go about it? Do they have to be present here? Do they need to reach directly to VCs to get some soft commitment? Could you please give us more info about EIS, SES, tax reliefs, and then that process?
Absolutely. So for us, undoubtedly, a business would need to be registered here in the UK. That's because of our close government links as a home office endorsing body. But I believe, other funds do vary. But for us, primarily, they do need to be a UK entity. And, there's a lot of benefits that come with that, such as the R&D tax credits. They're a phenomenal way of retaining tax as a business, with the government rewarding you to excel in innovation here. So it's well worth looking at to actually be a registered firm in the country.
It's really, really important to access these schemes where investors get some money back as well from the tax. Okay, so this one is for Monique. Could you please tell us, you briefly mentioned about the sectors that you're looking at and then where you see loads of female entrepreneurs stepping in, but we see artificial intelligence, data, health, biotech, even femtech is growing rapidly. And London is known to be even still a very low number, but it's a leading European city that has a largest amount of female entrepreneurs. But what's, in your opinion, are the sectors that are really interesting and kind of fast growing?
Yeah, I think fintech, as you mentioned, is probably still the most popular sector here. And that's probably because I suppose the regulatory environment is quite friendly and open to innovation and introducing kind of new technologies. I think I don't necessarily think there's a specific sectors that female founders look at. I mean, we've invested in many female founders who are software founders, have software companies, and there's a broad range. I think what's really exciting in particular about female founders in the UK right now is there's a lot of large reputable funds who are also doing initiatives specifically for female founders, such as office hours. There's like C Ventures, which is a female founder mentoring network with many investors on board. So I think the fact that there's a lot of light being shed on the lack of investment going into female founders, and the fact that people and funds and investors are actually doing something about it, I think it's an incredible opportunity for founders. I mean, they don't necessarily have to be in the UK. I think even speaking to these funds before you enter the UK is still a good opportunity. So I think, in terms of if I had to pick sectors, obviously fintech is really interesting, healthcare because of obvious reasons, life sciences, things like e-health. Also, I think digital security is important, given the fact that there's a kind of rapid digital transformation going on, everyone kind of going online, and education, which hasn't gained as much momentum, I think, kind of ed tech. So there's still kind of opportunities for those. But I think all in all, it's a great time to be a female founder. It's a slow progress, but albeit kind of progress in itself.
Sorry, just took me some time to unmute myself.
That's fine.
Well, when you're talking about female founders, do you think there is enough female founders in the UK, or should we attract more, or there is still kind of a disbalance in terms of female and male? Well, because obviously this especially VC's male-dominated industry. So what do you think there is enough female founders?
There's definitely not enough. I think there was recently released data saying for every pound of investment, 15 pence goes into female founders. So there's a lot of progress to be made, as said. So there isn't enough. There's a lot of interest in it, given for example, we're an all-female fund. When we're speaking to investors ourselves, there's a lot of interest, not just, the fact that we're women, but there are more, they're paying attention to ESG principles, and diversity and inclusion is a big thing as well. So as I said, it's not as good as it can be with 15p of every pound going into female founders, but I think it's a great time. There's a huge kind of opportunity to really grab everyone's attention and kind of present your business in a kind of, in a good way. I don't know if Emma has anything to add as well to that.
Yeah, I completely agree with Monique. We're a very female-focused VC as well, and we have female investment leads, we have female head of board. The focus now is really coming into female founders without a doubt. I think a really unique thing with VC is there's a lot of misconception where you're going to be made to pitch, and it's really stressful, and it puts a lot of female founders off. Whereas if you're purely looking at an innovative concept, and it doesn't matter who is behind that concept at all. So I think, the thing to take away is if you are a female founder, now is the time to really come forward. There's a lot of boys that need beating up in the area, so go for it.
Oh, this is amazing. Thank you, ladies, for supporting that diversity. I think diversity inclusion is really important, especially when it comes to underrepresented and overlooked founders. I think there is a fact that only 1% from the whole VC funding goes into Black and brown founders, and 0.25 into female Black and brown founders, which is very, very low. So thank you for supporting that sectors. And you, Monica, mentioned social impact and the way that investors are now looking, not only VCs, but also other institutional investors are looking into investing in more something sustainable, something impactful. Emma, could you please give us a brief kind of story around your social impact of views and then similar approaches to investing in more greener and sustainable future.
Absolutely. So we believe in serving something greater than ourselves as a fund. We believe that you can still fuse fantastic returns for our investors by doing good for the economy. So we invest in anything from biotech to medtech, fintech, as long as there is a very pure message with a tangible result. I think too often in this industry, there's a lot of companies impact washing, which is where they're saying they're doing good, but there's no actual tangible benefit to see at the end of it. So we're one of the signatories of the the World Bank signatory for the impact investing. And there's further and further effort going into to make these companies responsible and actually have benefits to show at the end of each investment. So that's a really, really exciting stage now being introduced. As mentioned before, we have a very agnostic portfolio. So we're very open to different ideas, but they do have to have a very clear benefit to society for us to get involved.
And just a kind of a short thing to add to that, while, I mean, we're speaking to investors for our fund right now as well, and actually most of their requirements are for us to also consider ESG principles or diversity and inclusion in our investments ourselves. So it's not only something that we want to do, but it's also something that our investors are asking us to look at as well.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
yes,
it's very exciting, like, I think, as you'd agree, for investors now to be prioritizing this. It's a huge move in the industry, and
absolutely.
Very positive.
It's absolutely fantastic. Hopefully, we will make much better investors, and our LPs will be more looking towards that, which is most important, I guess, to make change the source of the investments. When we're talking about impacts, what impact has EU exit had on this market? Emma?
Well, I think it's a tough question to answer at the moment. But I think London will retain its place as its financial capital. And we would expect increased inflows of investees thanks to these new initiatives that have been put forward by the government. So we can only really see it growing in size thanks to those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the VC industry has seen any impact itself from it just yet. It may be too early to tell. I mean, I was initially kind of worried about things like hiring of talent, but as the earlier panelists have mentioned, there's no danger of that happening. There's a lot of support at government level as well as investors. So, yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's unclear. One thing unclear to me is how fintech will be impacted with like regulatory requirements. But as I said, it's probably too early to tell. So far, so good.
These are really good points. I think, well, fintech as London is being a financial capital of the world, really, and we have a financial conduct authority as kind of golden rule, as we have with healthcare, with golden rule for with NHS and golden rule of health. I believe we'll just get somehow through it with the sandboxes and everything that is in place. There is always a way through. But you mentioned a lack of talent, or a good founder. For you, what does it mean to be a good founder? What do you look into the founders in particular when you want to invest in them?
I'll go first, Emma. So I mean, we typically, instead of kind of saying the typical things, I mean, I think execution is really important. So you need to kind of a founder having a consistent ability to say that they want to do something and actually go out and execute it. And then kind of tied to those also communication skills. So it's not a matter of just being able to execute well. I think being able to kind of communicate it as well with your users, your co-founders, whether your employees, investors. So I think, having the language and communication skills to kind of get people excited and explain what your business does in a couple of sentences, also quite important. And then just another kind of touch on that is kind of the internal motivation to, not to get discouraged when things go wrong. I think founders, when they things go wrong probably 90% of the time, I'm sure most founders can agree to that, but just stay motivated and kind of overcome bad decisions or kind of bad outcomes is also quite important. So just to stay passionate and always kind of look for solutions rather than getting discouraged and kind of giving up.
Yeah, I completely agree with Monique. I think you do have to put your ego aside as a founder. You have to take criticism very, very well, because there are people that know the market better than you, especially if you're bringing a product into a different country. You have to be driven. There's no doubt you have to have the passion, but you do need to think laterally. You need to, like I say, you need to take on advice. If you're reporting to a VC, you need to have clear communication skills. But also, don't give up. If you're not accepted the first time, think about why you weren't accepted. Did you approach the wrong Home Office endorsing body? When you look on the Home Office website, it tells you each sector that they're interested in. So that's a really fundamental starting point, is to know who you're pitching to. But yeah, be able to describe your business in as short as concise way that you can, so that you're not confusing investors from the get-go. But I would suggest the overall is just, don't give up. Every successful business person in this world has taken a knock or two, and they didn't get to where they are, without having done that. So yeah, just keep going.
Amazing. Some really brilliant tips. Thank you for sharing that. And when it comes to the ticket sizes you ladies invest in, what are those? And do you believe there is a kind of a gap in the market, especially when it comes to pre-seed and then seed stage startups?
We've actually done some research into this. So as a fund, we typically invest up to £2 million and always aim to follow on at least 1 or 2 rounds. Our sweet spot is late seed. So we aim for anything kind of between up to 15% of equity in a deal. I personally think that there is this is quite a controversial subject. Some people say there isn't a gap. Some people say there is a gap. I personally think there is a gap at late seed in particular. So there's many pre-seed and seed funds, amazing ones like Seed Camp and Playfair Capital. But some amazing Series A and growth investors like Notion, Target Global, Excel. But I think securing initial kind of funding, whether it's a friends and family round, and not everyone always has kind of rich friends and family to fund them. But once you kind of run out of those funds, and you need to secure additional funding to get you to those kind of Series A metrics, whether it's £1 million annual recurring revenue, or if it's 100,000 monthly recurring revenue, which is typically kind of the benchmark seen for Series A investments. I think having that access to that top up is always quite valuable. Some founders, can get really stuck at the point where they can't secure funding. But then there's also a flip side saying, good companies will always be able to secure funding. There's another interesting point. I've been speaking to kind of my friends at kind of the larger growth funds who are saying their normal ticket sizes are £5 to £10 million, but actually they're deploying as little as 100,000 in seed deals just to get access to the company. So that's an interesting development. We'll see how that goes. I think it's kind of a new thing that as of kind of last year or last couple of years, but I think there is a gap. I think, however, funds are noticing it and kind of going slightly earlier. So yeah, it's down to the companies to secure the funding.
Yeah, I completely agree with Monique. I think companies are actually having to come in a lot earlier than they used to. A great example is we recently invested in a biotech, and very, very early stage, but Allergan, who's one of the biggest pharmas in the world, was so keen on it. They actually had to come in at startup level because these amazing opportunities are getting poached very, very early on. So for us as a fund, our smallest ticket size is around 250,000. That would be for an early stage startup coming into our R&D fund. And then we help them grow through into our VC fund. So around Series A, we normally support for about 3 to 5 years, depending, and that can range up to anything to 15 million over a scaled time period. So we do look to provide that support, going further.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic to know, because these investors are completely different, where there is how I call it stupid money, or being a strategic investor that's going to follow your journey, work with you, be on an advisory board, and then support follow-on investments to make sure that you scale from once you come to the UK and you can scale globally. That's absolutely fantastic for our audience to know. And lastly, I wanted to ask you, where can people reach you? And are there any kind of particular places and then ways that you like to be pitched to?
I'm more than happy to be reached out to on LinkedIn. Also, our website, we have a link where you can submit your pitch deck. We review each of them in a very detailed way and actually aim to go back to founders with feedback. As I said, I'm more than happy, specifically kind of underrepresented founders, female founders, give me a shout on LinkedIn and let me know. I don't know if there's anything kind of going around after the event, but I'm also happy to share my email address.
Amazing. Emma,
Yeah,
how about you?
Via LinkedIn is a good route, but also we do have a deal flow page on our website, so that handles our innovator inquiries. We are very quick at getting back to people as well. I think it's very important to help manage people's expectations, so we do always try to be as quick and jump on them as we can be.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, ladies, for coming today to our event and sharing really good tips.
Thank you for having us.
Supporting, which is most important thing, supporting the diversity and inclusion. It's really fantastic to see two ladies on the panel, which is usually not the case, but hopefully we'll have more of you soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And it's now time for our third part of this event, which is a fireside chat that I'm really looking forward to. It's moderated by fantastic and brilliant Michael Jacobson, and it's all about technology innovators. Oh, hey, hello, Michael.
Hey, how are you? Very
good. Well, I'm very much looking forward to hearing your talk with Marek. And please take it over. Stage is yours. Take care.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, ladies. I really enjoyed the previous interview. Good morning, Marek. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing very well. How are you?
It's great to see you. Great to have this opportunity to chat with you. Your story is fantastic. Firstly, before we dive into your experience in the UK, I want to ask, you've started or co-founded 2 enormous businesses. What's the secret? We'll start with an easy question. What's the secret?
I don't think I actually have a good answer to this. I can only repeat to what one of my initial investors in actually the first venture told me is, Marek, if you want to create value, you need to work hard over a long period of time. So I think that's the answer, and you also need a bit of luck to be ready for it. So I'm sorry, I don't have any magic sauce.
Well, maybe the magic sauce is in the purpose, because moving along to, I know that you were with McKinsey, and now you're based, I think, in Berlin with XOM, but of course you co-founded Roelik in Czech Republic, and in the UK you have Sera Healthcare, which of course is one of the biggest healthcare organizations in the UK. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And I noticed that, part of the focus of Sera Healthcare is that it's a very purpose-driven company. Could you talk a little bit about that and about the way that you approach healthcare, and also you've approached your attitude to the corona crisis and to recruitment, because there seems to be this real thread of purpose and engagement.
Right. So what we do at SeraCare, for those who don't know the company, we are tech-enabled domiciliary and nursing care provider. So we are in a very traditional industry because you always need somebody who is helping to take care of older people with dementia, people on home cancer treatment, people who have some other health issues or are bedbound. So this is very traditional thing. And a few years back, I exited partly from Roelik, which is online grocery retailer, and I wanted to take a break. And by McKinsey network, I got connected to British investors actually, and we were discussing multiple opportunities. And I brought in ideas about the fintech startups, and they were telling me, "Hey Marek, why don't you have a look also in the healthcare markets? Because we believe there is actually less competition. Probably like not that many founders are brave enough to get in. It might not look as sexy as obviously like crypto or some other hot topics back then. And you can have like a really solid business, and at the same time you bring fantastic impact." So that was the seed that we planted and grew into SeraCare as you know it today, with over 5,000 employees.
This is an enormous company. You've got 5,000 employees. You're quite an acquisitive company. You've bought, I think, some in 2020. You bought some healthcare organisations as well in Scotland.
Correct.
was former Mearscare branches in Scotland. That's correct. And we had several other acquisitions last year, and obviously for this year we plan the same.
And before we dive into the more detailed activities, what's the long-term vision of this company? Obviously, it's always an important sector. Clearly, you've got engaged with it and ramped it up at a time where the society needed healthcare much more than ever before. But what's the long-term vision for this business in the UK, or in fact, taking it from the UK globally?
When I came to UK and we were doing the first research on how this could work, I did several phone calls to current providers in the market, and there's plenty, and they are doing well financially and otherwise. And for instance, it was really hard to get in reach their customer support. It was very difficult to understand what the care plan is in place, and a lot of the work was done on paper at people's homes, and the oversight of how people get medication was also something that was not checked properly. And I was thinking, if you put technology in, you just can do this so much better. So this is what we started doing. And the mission is to genuinely improve the quality of life of people who need care significantly. At the same time, improve the job satisfaction and the work conditions for the care workforce, which is obviously one of the largest groups of people working in the entire UK and worldwide. And how do we do this? We do this through technology. Instead of writing a report on paper and then collecting them once a month from people's homes, you just file the report about the person at the moment when you are there. And you don't need to write notes that people are not able to read afterwards, but you can just press buttons. You can select what the mood level is. You can select the medication that you've provided. You can monitor the vital signs if that's necessary, for instance, and mandated by the GP or district nurse or anyone else. So the people spend much less time on the bureaucracy and the paperwork, and they can spend much more time on the actual care. What makes the difference, right? Because you don't need somebody like writing a ton of papers for you, but you need somebody to actually help you with your daily activities, with your washing, with your medication, or just be there for you because you don't have anyone else to talk to and you want to just have a company.
Absolutely.
And once you have this technology piece in place that makes it more efficient, then you can have also the added value that comes from having all this data digitally. So what did we start doing quite early on? We had medical students and other professionals actually score those reports. What is, for instance, the chance that this person will develop an infection? Is there a sign of deterioration in terms of dementia? Is there a risk of fall? Is there a risk of hospitalization? And from those, we were able to actually teach algorithm, which is not super sophisticated, but it's a standard deep neural network learning algorithm. And we are able to predict like the changes, like risk of fall, risk of hospitalization. And in case this highlights some risk in your patient groups, you can obviously start the intervention much early on. And this can have such a big impact for people. If you catch the infection 2 or 3 days earlier, there's the difference between just taking antibiotics at home and everything is fine in 3 or 4 days, and getting into the hospital and having a risk of follow-on hospital infection and further deterioration, because obviously some of those people are quite frail. So this is something that is dramatically improving the quality of service and impact for the service users, as well as for the bodies that are supervising it, regardless if it's clinical commissioning groups who are supervising the hospital discharge, or is the local councils in the UK who are taking care of the elderly population in general.
So it's extremely innovative technology that you're using, solving a big problem. And I believe that I think by 2070, the cost of an aging population across the whole EU, which I appreciate the UK is not part of any longer, but in general terms, cost is going to be rising to about 27% or thereabouts of GDP. So to be able to address this sector in such an innovative way is not only going to help patients, but it's going to somehow affect the overall economy and nations.
Absolutely, absolutely, you're absolutely right. I think it's if you just look at the age pyramid and how does it develop over the next years, you see that this is a rising sector that obviously needs innovative solutions, because otherwise the cost of maintaining the care at the current levels would be just too high, and the service level would be too poor.
Mara, can I just ask you, as a founder, you mentioned a little earlier in the conversation about when you're devising this business or co-devising this business, and you're making phone calls and you're having ideas, and I'm going to call this person and that person. As a co-founder, you're obviously been very hands-on with this business. I know you've moved to Berlin now, but you obviously really hands-on co-founder.
I think, so I founded now, or co-founded 3 or 4 businesses. And I actually think that the business is like also very fragile. It's not a baby, I wouldn't call it a baby, but it's a very fragile organization. And as any new unit, you are quite, like the market conditions can change and the competition can change. And you obviously need to know all the nitty-gritties at the beginning to be able to successfully scale and test the first hypothesis. And maybe one advice for fellow entrepreneurs: if you are looking at like the business plan, all the business plans that I got for all my businesses were wrong by a large margin.
Yeah.
If you are good, you put together the right lines in your P&L, so you will know where will you get money and what will be your costs. And I think what is actually very early on, as if you are building like a new business, not like another restaurant or something where you have a lot of benchmark from the market, to understand, for instance, what will be your cost of acquisition, what will be your transaction cost, what will be, I don't know how much material will you get stolen, lost, you will need to replace. You have no idea. And the purpose, obviously, of the different funding rounds, and as you go through the process and make the company more mature, is to verify those assumptions that you have in a blue or yellow color in your business plan, if you are right or wrong. And that's something that actually decides the success of the company, because if you are too far off, and you are too far off from any profitable unit economics, then it's obviously very hard to continue funding the business.
That's great advice, because obviously so many people get so caught up with trying to make the business plan perfect, but it never will be. But I think that's excellent advice for all of us. And talking about funding rounds, you did a funding round, I think in 2020, you raised another $70 million US. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so what can you tell me about that? Did that take place with, obviously it's a US dollar raise, was that out of the UK, or was that directly out of the US, or how did that work? What was it for?
It's a combination. We have investors from Germany, from the United States, from Britain. We have a bunch, obviously, of angels as well from the previous rounds in Seracare. We were raising during the COVID times. For us, it was not a problem. I think we as a company are in very privileged position, because we are obviously in the industry that is impacted by COVID, obviously, because we have a very frail population. We need to protect them. We need to protect our workforce. We need to make sure that they isolate. And if they isolate, we need to make sure we have a replacement staff. So operationally, this is hard. But in terms of a demand and like the potential for the business to grow, this obviously went up, because on one hand, the families, for instance, could not travel due to restrictions. So they were not able to take care of their loved ones as much as before the pandemic, and you appreciate to have a professional support on it. So this demand is growing. At the same time, I think the British government made it very clear that they will not leave these people alone and will protect them. So all the councils were able to increase the payments or pay earlier. And I think they did a marvelous job in making sure that the sector is stable and have enough resources. So for us, what it means is there is a tremendous potential to grow. And the last thing that COVID brought, which was actually positive for us, in the other sectors where there are crises, a lot of people were laid off. And there is, I think it's well known in the media, there is always a shortage of staff in our sector. Mm-hmm. And we were able to train many of the people, for instance, from hospitality industry, and put them in a fair paid care position. So for us, this boosted our recruitment pipeline. And we even
5,000, another 1,000 people or something of this kind you brought across. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a goal, and we are hiring as fast as we can. There is one more project that I can mention at the beginning. Actually, the government asked us, because we moved also the onboarding and training to a large extent online as opposed to offline, which obviously helps at COVID times. I'm sorry, I see some background noise. And we started the project called Joint Social Care. And we not only use this technology for Sarah Care, but we made this available for all other care providers in the country. So they can actually use the platform to recruit more people. And we received the support from the government to do this project. That's a digital innovation.
And, so I mean, in general, you've had a pretty positive experience doing business, I guess, in the UK. You're working with the government, you're working even with other people in the healthcare sector in general. But what has been your experience? Because it's been a pretty difficult or perhaps challenging time, not just because of COVID, but because of Brexit. But you're finding it pretty good for your business in terms of.
Well, we are always, like any business has challenges, and if you are building a new company or startup that is high growth, it's really difficult, because if you grow as fast as SarahCare, the company every 6 months is a different company. Because if you are increasing the number of staff and increasing the complexities of the processes and integrating other companies that you bought, it comes with tremendous operational and IT challenges. But I think we are up to it, and it's for all the different team members. I think it's fun, and it's not just a challenge. It's hard work, but and we will be done in a month. It's not like that, but everyone knows in the company what a big challenge and problem this is, and if we crack it, there is enormous impact that the company will bring. But also there is a big business upside for the team as well as for the investors in the venture.
Yes, and just on that, talking about potential expansion plans, just to bring that back to the beginning for a moment. Coming from Czech Republic, your global international business personnel living in Berlin. What was the rationale behind choosing London or the UK as the headquarters for SarahCare?
So before that, I was actually lucky enough to take a loan in a bank and start the first venture in Czech, which was online grocery retail. And my grandma back then was telling me, Marek, I was always thinking that you will be a banker and you're such a disappointment. Why would you build an online retailer? Because obviously that was something else. And afterwards, I cashed out some of it, and one of the investors took over the company, because back then I was young and inexperienced manager, and a grocery retailer, like you can imagine, like Ocado, that's super complicated business. And if you don't have an experience how to manage people, how to scale organization and build operations, so I was not the right person. I wanted to take some time off because I was lucky enough that the business was not a failure, but the business was scaling nicely, and obviously needed at that time a more experienced management. And then I was thinking what to do, and I actually did not have a plan. Okay, I'll go to UK. I was more open to whatever the opportunity will arise, and I got in touch through the McKinsey network with the first angels in Sarah, and they brought me to the British market. And what I really liked is the entire support system and the community around startups in Britain. And I think it's very different from the rest of Europe. I think in the previous panel, people already mentioned the EIS and SEIS schemes. Yes. For me, what it means in a simple word is like you let people who pay money in the UK, who are successful and make enough money, decide what could be the next innovation. Instead of having some big government-led fund who is picking the startups by commission, you just let the successful executives and entrepreneurs and other people in the country to say, hey, I will bet on this guy because I like him, because I can share some knowledge that I gained with them. And I think this creates good peer pressure as well, because all successful people I know there are investing, and this is great for the startup community because the money flows in, but it's not just money, it's also the experience of the people. So that's what I really liked at the beginning, and I think this is something that is a huge competitive advantage of starting the business in UK. Not only in London, this is the true for all the other places.
Yeah, the SEIS and EIS schemes, I think, are game changers. They're among, in my opinion, they're among the best in the world, and they really help, don't they? When, I mean, obviously in the early days, either as a startup or as a scale up, they really help you to get the investment in and to get things moving forward. I know I've found the same with my own businesses. It really makes a difference.
Yeah, completely agree, Michael. I think it's a game changer, and that's what makes UK a great place to start a business today, regardless of Brexit.
Yes, and Marek, do you believe then that springboarding from the UK as Seracare, are we going to see this in Central and Eastern Europe? Obviously, maybe Czech Republic or somewhere else anytime soon.
So I think that the expansion is on the table. Obviously, it's a matter of capacity of management time to be able to devote there. For Seracare, there are two pathways to further growth. One is geographical expansion, and the other is expansion into the other service line in more complex areas. So you are looking at very complex patients, and you can build a service line there, or you can go further on geographically. And I'm sure Seracare will do both. The matter is timing, and we have intense discussions about it, and you will see some updates soon. But I believe the geographical expansion in Europe, potentially in the United States, is a very logical next step.
Well, that's fantastic. And just as we head towards the end of the interview, I want to just ask a couple of questions just about you as an entrepreneur. We touched on this at the beginning, but obviously you appear to be an extraordinarily humble person. You know, Rolex an enormous success, Seracare is an enormous success. What does your day look like now? You're now running a different business altogether, but you're very much across the details of Seracare and talking about being involved. What does your day look like, and how do you balance innovation, execution, and the different responsibilities that you have across your businesses?
Understand. So currently I'm active as a board member in Seracare, and I'm in regular touch with operational and IT teams because I'm a geek by background. So that's where I think I can help. I'm running full-time the XO Materials, which is a B2B startup that is automating procurement of materials. I could talk about it also for hours, but let's keep it for now. And I combine it now. I have two little daughters. One is 1 year and the other is 2. So my day changed from like years ago. Like in Rohlik and in Sera, I was working 100 hours a day, 100 hours not a day, but 100 hours a week, which was very busy. I even had some health troubles from it, and I think part of it was also like my inexperience as a manager, which I was compensating by adding more and more hours. Yeah. And I think you can do it as a starter, as a young entrepreneur, and it works. But at a certain point of time, this is not sustainable, and you just need to learn how to make sure it's really simple. There are only a few things that you need to focus on. One is you build your team, and you need to make sure they have a successful week, so they understand if they are doing a good job and they are working on the right things. And how I do it, we use OKR system in the companies. Yes. I have frequent one-on-ones with the direct reports that I have, and I have a weekly management call. Those are very important meetings that I prepare for. The other part is that you have a good relationship with investors, because if the investors trust you, they will help you also in times when it's not so all unicorns and rainbows, which happens to any business that I had a chance to get to know. And you should devote time to it as well, so they understand where the business is going. And you need to be very honest with them. What are the things that work well? But even more importantly, what are the things that are not going so well? Mm-hmm. Because if that's not if they understand that some things are problematic, but you have a plan in place, you understand, and you're acting on it, then they will support you, because they will feel that you know what are you doing. So this is how to take care of investors and how to take care of your employees, that make sure that the company is pushing further. So this is for me, let's say 50% of my time. Then as a CEO, you need to spend time on a big picture, because typically nobody else in the company have time for it. So I just go for a walk and I think, are the things that we are doing really, like, is it enough? Yeah, to get to the next proof point of the company. What can we change? Which next hire could I bring to the company? And I think for me, I'm introvert, so I need some alone time to spend on those topics. So this is the big picture thing. And the fourth thing for me is to take care of yourself and your family. And this is important. I read all the stories like the big entrepreneurs, they can sleep 4 or 5 hours a day, and then they are back, and they immediately run back to the office and are able to perform like that. And I was thinking a few years ago, I need to be exactly like that. Sleep is a loss of time. It doesn't work for me. Yeah, I cannot do this anymore. If I don't have 7-8 hours of sleep a day, like for one day, that's not a problem. But if I do this for 1 or 2 weeks, I feel so slow. I feel so tired. So I need to devote sufficient time to sleep, to spend with the family and my small children, and to do sports. And I think if you organize your day right, especially in Corona times, because everything is remote, there is no problem for you to find an hour a day, practically every day, that you can do some small physical activity that will help with your physical and mental well-being. Being it a walk, being it a small yoga session, being it a stretching class, being it pushing some iron in the gym or something else. And I think if people plan it well, this is something that can tremendously boost their level of energy that they can then give back to the business.
Well, either you have 100 hours in a day or you're very organized with your time, because it sounds like an amazing balance. And I was so interested in the middle of all of that to hear, in particular with regards to the business, how you switch from the detailed management meetings to then, because that's the execution, to the innovation, which you really bring on by simply going for a walk. And I think that's really a powerful.
Maybe the tip is you don't need to do all the work yourself. What I ask my team members, prepare the OKRs, which are your goals, but we are not discussing like every single reporting step. I'm just discussing what is going extremely well and how to learn from it, and what is going badly and where do we need to intervene. And the other thing I ask my teams to do is to prepare problem-solving topics, because that's where I'm strong and I can add value. But they need to prepare it up front. It's in the file that is ready for the meeting. So they don't just come for the meeting to discuss things. They need to put a thought in it. So you then, once you are in the meeting, you have focus. And I think to find the focus is one of the hardest things that you need to learn as an entrepreneur. Because you cannot know everything and you cannot be everywhere. And if you just add more and more hours to it, it still doesn't help.
So learning where to focus your energy and how to get that return from your energy.
Absolutely, Michael.
I completely agree. Well, Marek, it's been really inspirational, I'm sure, for everybody. Certainly for me, it's been a pleasure to have a fireside chat with you today. So thank you so much for joining, on behalf of all of the organizers, for joining this event today as well.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I hope it's helpful for the audience as well. And I would, if I could recommend one place to start a business in UK or in Europe, I think UK is a great place, or one of the greatest. So just don't be afraid. I'm sure you will get the visa sorted. If you cannot sort your visa, you're probably not a successful entrepreneur, because this is just the smallest hurdle on the way. And enjoy. It's a lot of things that you can learn in your life.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And the organizers have asked me on behalf of everybody, I think, to thank you all for being here today. This concludes the event. Thanks to all the panelists, and thanks to all of the people that participated in interviews, and thanks again to Marek. I hope everybody has a fantastic day and continues to proceed to work with the UK. Regardless of Brexit, there's so many opportunities, as we've just heard. I'm engaged with them, Marek's engaged with them, everybody else that's been spoken to today is engaged with them. So thanks very much, and see you all again soon.